Ladies and Jamsters, we are here today to talk about the state of the Phoenix Suns. Ask not what you can do for your sons, but ask what your sons can do for you. If not us, who? If not now, Matthew, I ask, when?
What were you asking? Was that a
Ask,
real question?
not really. These are more of quotes from John Fitzgerald Kennedy. It's something I'm workshopping right now as potentially being somebody who could be on the subreddit stakeout
Oh,
next year.
damn,
Maybe
dude.
getting a little John Fitzgerald Kennedy bobblehead and then having him read the subreddit stakeout. But we are talking the state of the Phoenix Suns, and I figure I'd come from a presidential standpoint and try to be a little bit more elegant and concise when I talk about things like John Fitzgerald Kennedy would say. He would say things like, forgive your enemies, but never forget their names, Matthew.
I don't think we're gonna have a president this year. That's my prediction.
Okay.
Just like I predicted, OKC. I don't think we're going to have I don't think it's gonna happen. I think
right.
there's not going to be a race. There's no election. I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but something else will happen. We're not going to have a president this year.
Wow.
That's a big prediction. I don't know. You didn't
Matthew.
ask. You were just doing impressions.
I was
But
just
reminding me.
I was just trying to do a John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and Matthew, you completely took it sideways. I'm going to actually put a poll in the chat. If you happen to be watching along live, I'm going to say, should John do a JFK impression for the subreddit stakeout? If you happen to be watching along live on YouTube, you can vote. You can vote. Something. Have you seen that the new Jerry Seinfeld movie, Unfrosted?
No, is it like an anime, or is it animated? Is it a real movie? Unfrosted, is it like Frozen but unfrosted?
No, it's it's about the wars essentially that happened in the 1960s between Post and Kellogg, the cereal wars. And they were coming up with a new treat, a breakfast treat, which eventually became the Pop-Tart. And so it's a movie based on those events by Jerry Seinfeld. And Bill Burr plays JFK in this movie, and he fucking nails it. This movie, so it's on Netflix. It was released last week. And obviously without the Phoenix Suns playing, you're going to find extra things to watch on television. So it's got a lot of different comedians in it. Amy Schumer's in it. I wish I was more prepared to talk about Unfrosted, because the movie kind of starts and it's kind of goofy and it's very eclectic. It's very 1960s. And as it progresses, you're like, this is actually highly entertaining. By the end of the movie, you're like, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And the different characters and the different comedians who are in this movie definitely make it worth watching if you have a chance to do so. So I recommend doing it for your country, for the Suns. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, right there.
I'll have to. It was like it was between him and Bill Burr. I was watching the baby reindeer one actually.
Oh,
baby reindeer.
No,
that's pretty insane.
Yeah, watch something funny like
that's all I saw last. Yeah, okay, I'll watch Unfrosted.
I'm telling you,
chill out a little bit.
It's good. Yeah, just chill out. So
have some laughs, huh? Don't sit there and try to slit your wrists or whatever.
Yeah, I know. that show's fucking weird.
Sorry,
man.
if you do that, get some help.
Well, I'm workshopping things here. It's the off season for the Phoenix Suns. Nothing's going on around the organization. So we're going to sit here tonight, and first and foremost, we're going to thank you for tuning in to the Suns Jam Session podcast. Whether you're watching long live or watching later, listening at another time, thank you for doing so. Now, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm almost going into like a Mayor Wimby, who Mayor Wimby is based off of John Fitzgerald Kennedy on The Simpsons. But this is a reminder to everybody. If you happen to be listening to this podcast and you're on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. Rate us 5 stars. Write a review. We'll read it right here on the podcast. And ATOG2275 did just that, said amazing podcast. And this was the description that they wrote after giving us 5 stars on Apple Pods. I just got to say, I'm a Knicks fan, but I'm also a Suns fan. Besides, I just ignore the negative comments from YouTube and just sit back and enjoy. Huge thank you for making my life feel better, John and Matthew, from Anastasia in New York. Thank you, Anastasia, or
Hey, thank
Anastasia.
you.
Could be Anastasia.
I like Anastasia better. Well, no, if it's Anastasia, that's fine. Anastasia, though, it's a good name. It's a movie.
Both are great.
Yeah.
And when you take a little time out of your day, I got to stop doing that. I also have been listening to a lot of Bill Burr podcasts as well. So it's just
you went to go see Bill Burr, and then you saw the Bill Burr movie, and now you listen to his podcast again?
Yeah, well, yeah. It's that time of the year where I don't want to be so goddamn depressed. But we are here to talk about the state of the Phoenix Suns. And obviously, on a day like today, in which the Phoenix Suns have parted ways from their head coach, there's plenty that we're going to talk about on this edition of the Suns Jam Session podcast. So we're just checking in on you. Crack them if you got them, Suns fans. And let's go ahead and talk about the state of the Phoenix Suns. Oh, my dear girl. So here we are. It's May 9th, 2024, and the Phoenix Suns are without a head coach. I did go live this afternoon at 2 p.m., 15 minutes just to kind of break the news on the Suns Jam Session podcast. But obviously, with Matthew being here, this is where you're going to get the full scope of everything that's happened around Matt Ishbia's decision to part ways with Frank Vogel, which, of course, brings me to our first question.
Matthew, I've got to ask.
All right, Matthew, I got to ask. What does firing Frank Vogel say about the culture in Phoenix since Matt Ishbia arrived?
Do you really think there's a culture here anymore, or is it just season to season? It's like it's like basically an episode or seasons of like Breaking Bad, where everything's just kind of drastically changed each season, right? There's nothing. People die. There's always just new characters. There's new drug users. You know what I mean? It's like it's not the same as it used to be. And I like how we always like to hold on to the old Suns, the Valley Suns, where DeAndre and all those guys are still on the team, but right now, I don't feel like there is a culture. I think that we need to have a guy that comes and brings a culture. Obviously, it's a players' league. And right now, we have players on the team that aren't going to buy in if you're a bullshitter. And basically, the firing of Frank Vogel just kind of tells me the guy was kind of a bullshitter, right? These guys are not going to buy into that. They're kind of more grown than that. I want to believe that they're more mature than that. And they're kind of looking for a player's coach. So the culture needs to come from a new coach, I feel like.
So it's interesting because, one, I love your analogy on Breaking Bad, because every season of Breaking Bad had its own personality, almost its own unique writing team to it. So when the season began versus where it ended, it would take you on an amazing journey. And it generally started with the state of Walter White being better off than he was at the beginning of the season by the end. And that's how it feels with the Phoenix Suns, right? So Matt Ishbia takes over in February of 2023, and at that time, Monty Williams is the head coach. He's here for a couple months. The season ends to the NBA champion Denver Nuggets in 6 games in the second round, and Monty's fired. And the majority of the Suns fan base was ready for that firing. I think that a lot of us felt that Monty Williams had reached his peak as a head coach with Phoenix. He took this team to the 2021 NBA Finals. They won 64 games the next, but he couldn't get over that hump, if you will. He couldn't get out of his own way relative to how he operated when it came to different usage of players and adjustments in game and in series. So when the time came, I think that we all, to your point, Matthew, it's time to change the culture. It's time to try something new. So what did they do? They brought in Frank Vogel. And when he was hired, I think that given the fact that we had Kevin Durant, we had Devin Booker, we shortly would receive Bradley Beal, we believed it was a quality hire given that he had won a championship in a situation where he had multiple stars. He'd been somebody throughout his career who was a defensively minded head coach. And therefore, with that defense in mind, you knew that is where this team most likely was lacking. So you're fortifying your weakness. Your weakness might be defense around these 3 amazing scores. Let's fortify it with a defensive mind. And he's also somebody who has taken on the challenge that Suns brass put before him. And that challenge was, you are going to have to assist and coach a roster that is completely flipped. I mean, what, like 11 new players, whatever it was, I think it was 11 new players. And that's something that he had done before. He'd done it in Orlando. He's done it with the Lakers because LeBron showed up and said, everybody get out of here. And so he had this track record for doing so. But somewhere along the way, the writers said at the beginning of the season, we're going to be great. And by the end of it, the writers are like, you're not going to win one playoff game. And Matt Ishbia said in his press conference, accountability needs to happen. Matthew, is this accountability, or is he being scapegoated for a disconnected team that didn't know how to play defense or be productive consistently on offense?
It's so hard to tell, really. But I think the whole Beal slapping his hand away his last minute or his last seconds there on the court, running back to the bench, like, I like how Beal did talk about, like, oh, I didn't know I really did that. Sorry, it was such a heat of the moment, basically, in his exiting interview. I don't believe that. I believe that kind of just showed how much respect that they had for Frank Vogel. I feel like they didn't respect him, and it had to happen. It's a scapegoat for sure, because there's always, like we talked about, there's that one common denominator in Devin Booker who's still on the team and we still can't win a championship. Surround him with talent. It still hasn't happened. There hasn't been inconsistency, obviously. You ran into a Timberwolves team that is just, they're phenomenal. They're going to probably sweep the Denver Nuggets, maybe win in 5. But still, like, you can never feel the emotion between the players and the coach on this team. And that's something you want to see, because we did like Monty for that reason, that he had that connection with the players. Yeah, he couldn't draw it up X's and O's and stuff like that, but you're going to keep getting coaches in here that might get swept again. It might be 1 year and done again. That's just the way that we're going to operate. So I think they're going to rely heavily on the players and what they want. So I don't know if this is going to be something where it's like, hey, they're going to go to KD. What do you want to maximize your skill set, like James Jones says, to get exactly what we need out of you to win a championship? Who would it be? Is Frank Vogel the guy? I don't know if he makes that decision. I don't know if Devin Booker does anymore. So I just think that they had to make it. They had to make a change because of the exit and how long they waited too. Man, they waited a week or so. It's like, what are you waiting for? It's like Darvin Ham was gone right after the Lakers season ended the next day. So you obviously knew that they were waiting for something, but then that's not a good look either. If I was Frank Vogel, I'd be like, well, what are you waiting for? Can you let me move on or no? Like, either go or you don't. Are you waiting for Budenholzer? Are you waiting for maybe Ty Lue to say, yes, okay, I'll give you guys a chance. I'll come interview. If you're waiting for that, it's like, what are we doing here, man? Because obviously if you get a guy like Ty Lue, that's a perfect, I think, match for this team. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like just like these players that are going to come in and out, surround Booker with, it's going to be the same thing with coaches probably every other year.
But isn't that, again, we go back to that word culture. Is that a culture that is enticing to people who want to come and be a part of this organization? That's lack of stability. It's lack of leadership. This is the third coach that Devin Booker is going to have in the last 3 seasons. I think it's his 6th overall, maybe his 7th overall now in 10 seasons, but his 3rd different head coach in 3 seasons. It's going to be the 3rd guy who's calling plays while Matt Ishbia is since he's owned this team. It's been a year and a half. It's lack of stabilization. And again, like, I'm not necessarily saying that Frank was the right guy, and there's definite reasons why I think Frank was fired. I think that what was said at the end of the season, literally, like, you and I are on the podcast, the body is still warm from the Suns dying. And Shams Charania and Doug Holler from The Athletic released a piece in which Kevin Durant says he feels like the coaching staff didn't utilize him properly. So that right there puts Frank Vogel on the chopping block and Matt Ishbia on the, well, shit, I got to choose now. It's because can these guys coexist, right? And so I think the writing was on the wall. I think that I know personally throughout the season, we had our ups and downs on our post-game podcasts about whether or not Frank Vogel was the right choice at head coach. But I said the whole season, like, you can't fire him mid-season. Just makes zero sense. But it's the offseason now, And I agree that he should have been fired. It's just unfortunate because the repercussion is, again, it puts forth a negative culture, and it shows this sentiment of disarray here in Phoenix.
Yeah, but then it's also one thing too for the players, just like to grow the fuck up and try to buy in if you can. For the fans, for the fan base, like you might want to try, but then I don't know what's going on. And I think right here, Suns Fever 83 says EJ said it best. I didn't see this. They were interviewing everyone. Ishbia doesn't live here, so he's not always around the team. Doesn't always see what's happening around the team. So maybe that's a thing. Maybe it's just a look and how this team went down. And just the expectations are just so high for this team to be a title contender every year. And then my biggest takeaway too is Bill Simmons always talks about it, where it's a new owner syndrome, where they're in here, they're going to tear it apart. And then it's just like, do they know what they're doing? Like, are we going to look back in 10 years from now and just be like, dude, we had a team, we had those guys, we had something, we got KD, but then after that, like, it just all went downhill. And then here we are 10 years from now, and we're still like trying to rebuild or something. You know what I mean? And like, it's a guy that doesn't know what he's doing that makes the final call on everything. So is it one of those things where it's like, is he like a Jerry Jones without Jimmy Johnson? You know what I mean? Is he going to just tear this team apart for 20 years or still not won a Super Bowl ever since, or a championship?
Yeah, it's, again, new owner syndrome is the best way to talk about it. Is he's trying to find his footing and unlock the way to winning. And winning, as we know, because we've been doing post-game podcasts for years and we've watched this team for even longer, winning in the NBA is hard. It's not some magic thing where you just go ahead and say, you know what, we just get 3 superstars, a guy who's won a championship as a coach, we should win. No, you can't win one game in the fucking playoffs. So obviously, I guess I'll ask this final question as we start to move. Again, we're talking about the state of the Suns on this podcast, and obviously we are without a head coach. At the end of the day, do you feel that firing Frank Vogel was the right move?
Yeah.
Or should they have done something else?
Yeah. I think last pod that I was on, we talked about it, and we were both okay with him returning. I believe, like, I was okay with it if he's going to say just give him one more year, but it just makes sense. I think it's something that had to happen. I think if you want to build something here, though, for the future, I don't think it can happen with this team. And I don't think it can happen with a guy like Devin Booker. Like, if you want to build something, like build a team that has good chemistry, just something, a better culture here, you maybe can. But right now, how the Suns look, and we'll talk about it with the contracts and stuff, you just can't do that right now. Bring a guy in with all these old guys, with Devin Booker in his prime. It's the culture thing is going to happen, I think, a few years later down the line, where Booker is like, all right, well, I can't win here. Should I move on? And the Suns like, well, we can't win with Booker. Should we move on? Like, that's always something that happens. And it's too bad, because I feel like the Suns are in that situation now when we never wanted it to happen.
I agree.
It's so sad, though.
Well, it's just, it's sad because from the outside looking in, we're a team that already feels like a joke. A team that had that, when the naysayers said it couldn't be done, and we hoped that it could be. And I'm talking about bringing Bradley Beal in and no point guard and yada, yada, yada. They were all right. They were all correct. And now we're like, well, okay, let's fire the head coach. And again, it's somebody has to be held accountable. And I talked about this earlier today on the Frank's Fate podcast that we had here on the Suns Jam session. And I said just that. Like, that was the big word that I took away from his press conference, was accountability. And this is his way of showcasing accountability to the fan base and internally. Because with Kevin Young leaving, a new coaching staff was going to have to be implemented anyways. You might as well do it with a fresh set of eyes. And when we talk about a fresh set of eyes, you have to take a look at the possible candidates who are being considered for the replacement of Frank Vogel. And it starts with Mike Budenholzer. There's a bunch of different names out there. You have Terry Stotts is available, Mark Jackson, Kenny Atkinson, Becky Hammond, Stan and Jeff Van Gundy, Mike D'Antoni's out there, Dwayne Casey, Steven Silas, JJ Redick is out there, Chauncey Billups up in Portland. He'd be somebody, Tyronn Lue, he's somebody out there. But based on what Arizona Sports' John Gambadoro has been saying kind of throughout the day is, it's and Woj reported on this as well. It's looking like it's going to be Mike Budenholzer. Initial thoughts on Mike Budenholzer.
Yeah, just really quick. The reason I'm laughing is John Trent says, and JJ Redick's not a name, obviously. I think Gambo said he's not. But JJ Redick can come in and start the old men in the big three team. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
So Budenholzer, yeah. I mean, I'm still confused at why he's not with the Bucks.
Because Giannis wanted him out of there.
I know, but then Giannis is such a weirdo now, man. Remember the time he shook his hand at the airport?
Yes.
And we lost the finals to him. I'm like, you know what? If we're going to lose to anybody, just like maybe Jokic, I respect the dude. But now he's just a weirdo. Like he's like Madonna now, man. It's just super strange. Like
he's gone through 2 head
Botox
coaches
in or something
in a year.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. The transition is just all the eyes are on you. You get what you want. Maybe that's a thing. That is a thing. You try not to believe that these players that you idolize, I mean, they are younger than me, that you love, like Giannis, is that type of player. Is he going to turn into a KD guy that's just going to fire every coach? I don't know. It just was weird to me that he was let go. So I'm absolutely okay with Budenholzer. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. It's so vanilla. It's so just like, okay, you had Frank Vogel. The guy who won the championship in 2020 didn't work out. Let's bring in the guy who won the championship in 2021. Now, granted, Mike Budenholzer's from here. He's from Holbrook. He went to Holbrook High School, so he is somewhat local. He's an Arizonan. He's not a Phoenician. He's an Arizonan. He did get ousted in Milwaukee in kind of an unceremonious fashion because their star didn't want any part of him. But the challenges will still remain. I don't care who the coaches are. The construct of this team is just wonky. You have Bradley Beal and Devin Booker. You don't have a point guard. There's not a lot out there in free agency. And that's, we're going to be bless you. We're going to go through things over the next few podcasts where we're exploring free agents. We're exploring the trade market. We're exploring draft picks. That's how we're going to be spending summer here on the Suns Jam Session podcast. It's May 9th. It's way too early to be doing this shit, but that's the situation that the Suns have put us in. And we're going to look what's out there. And that's part of what we're going to talk about on this pod is how this roster is constructed from a salary cap standpoint. And because it's such a wonky roster with apparently stars who I have to be used properly. Like, it's about me. It's not about us or the system. I wasn't used properly. Like, I love Kevin Durant. Kind of getting on my nerves. I'm looking forward to one thing that we're going to be doing over the next 5-6 weeks is we're going to have Trade Machine Mondays. And we're going to take a look at Phoenix Suns assets and put them in the trade machine and come up with different scenarios. Is it beneficial to trade this person? Is it not? What can you get in back? And Kevin Durant's the first one we're going to be doing next Monday, and I'm looking forward to that because I think that right now you can maximize Kevin Durant's value. And I'm not going to go on my whole speech about it because I have an article that'll be on Brightside talking about it, and then we'll talk about it on Monday. But if we have this touchy-feely, like, if I'm not in the right spot to succeed, it's your fault. It has nothing to do with you on the court. It's the system's fault. Sorry, bud. You were, 9th in the league in total isolation plays at 17.3%, and it's our fault? I don't know. So when it comes to Coach Bud coming in, granted, he's going to bring in some guys with him. He's going to have his own coaching staff. He's had plenty of time to think about it because he's been unemployed for a year. But I feel like he's not really a needle mover. I feel like outside of defeating our Suns in the 2021 finals, his reputation was one of somebody who didn't make adjustments, of somebody who couldn't win with Giannis until Giannis went fucking nuclear. Like, I could have coached that team in that finals. So I don't know if Mike Budenholzer becomes the head coach, if he's really what the answer is. That's why when I look at other options, if there's a Tyronn Lue out there, or a Chauncey Billups, or even a JJ Redick, who I know that Gambo said it's not going to happen, but somebody who's a little bit younger and might have the ability to garner respect from these players, that's the direction I want them to move in, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. That would be awesome. That would be, that's something that I pray about almost every night, Oh, dear geez. I'm not even going to say the name.
Oh my
I don't want to
God.
do that.
I'm talking to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Please give me somebody who can coach this Phoenix Suns team and do it well.
You
Like
know,
that?
yeah, just like that. I sound just like that too. I was going to say something though about, the whole KD thing. So there's something there, obviously. It's totally there. And whether or not he wants to deny it, that's fine. He can. We can only say what we see, or we can only describe how we're seeing the situation from afar. And I just see it as, you know what, maybe you do need to work on some stuff. I know you've been in the league for so long, and maybe you need to just adapt to a team that is, it's more of a team game, and just have some more self-awareness. Like for me, even with work, it's like I've come from I was so terrible working. Obviously, John knows. I still have things I need to work on, and I always have to keep looking at myself, not to be cliche and dumb. Look at myself in the mirror and be like, what do I need to do? Stop blaming everybody else. Because sometimes that seeps back in. Sometimes like, oh shit, Matthew, you're doing the same thing you used to do 10 years ago. And that got you nowhere. So Katie needs to realize that too, I feel like, right? Like it has to be something with him, because he came to this team. He didn't promise anything. He said, I haven't done anything yet. Well, 2 coaches are gone. We got swept. We are far from being a title contender. Like John said, we are a laughing stock of the laughing stock of the NBA, even though it looks a little bit better with the Wolves playing so well, but the Nuggets maybe can still pull that off. I think that he has a little bit more self-reflection. Obviously, we got a guy, that can go on Twitter, and it's just the saddest thing sometimes to me, and he'll never watch this, but it is super sad when he does go back and forth with the dudes. I can't stand that, and I feel bad for the dude sometimes.
When you look in the mirror, though, Matthew, and you're talking about
with my nipples showing,
being better, and you're shirtless, that's called accountability. That's self-reflection and accountability. It's not pointing the finger. When they're asking this Suns team, and Kevin Durant in particular, at the back end of the season, when leadership is clearly an issue, who's the leader? There's no him trying to step up. Like Bradley Beal at least tried to take some accountability. Like, we got to play better. We got to be better. Kevin Durant.
Just awkward.
I got to ask you, leadership. Dude, coach. That's all coach. Coach is the leader. Like that was his response. And again, like, I love Kevin Durant as a player. It's been fun to watch him as an offensive player, and I've been excited to see him on my team. But I'm at this point right now as a fan of Phoenix, as I take a look at the construction of this team, knowing that unfortunately, unless somebody can go up to Bradley Beal and talk him into waiving his no trade clause so we can get rid of him, garner some assets back that can be productive for this team, the only other out, in my opinion, is Kevin Durant. And let's say that you're a Kevin Durant stan right now, and you're like, blasphemy. How you should kiss the ground that Kevin Durant walks upon. You're lucky to have him in Phoenix. You don't deserve him. You Booker stans. Yeah, motherfucker. This is Booker's town. This is Booker's team. Okay? That's like LeBron James showing up in LA and expecting to be treated like Kobe was. That's Kobe's team. It always will be. That's Kobe's town. It always will be. Welcome to Phoenix. If you're a KD stan, just pass it on through the valley. Thank you. Don't let the door hit you with a good load split you. Because if Kevin Durant's gone and you're gone with him, fine, dude. Devin Booker, this is his fucking town. Has he had his issues? Yes. Does he need to be a better leader? Absolutely. Do you know what he needs to stop doing? Being like Kevin fucking Durant. That's what needs to happen. So the state of the Suns, obviously, there's some discombobulation going on. We don't have a head coach, although Mike Budenholzer is somebody who's obviously and they're talking about moving fast and furious. It's going to be like
exciting.
Yeah. Oh, God.
How many facilities is he going to build, Matt Ishbia? And there's just going to be people buried in it because they're just like, hurry up. He's hurt. We don't have time. Just we'll write his name on the wall when we're finished. Have the family come down and pay the respect.
We'll name a bench after him. Like, bench we buried him in.
Let's get this done.
We got to get it done.
Matt Ishbia has done a lot for this and this organization.
100%. And again, like,
it's just
new owner syndrome.
So, yep.
He's learning on the go, and guess who the casualties of his learning on the go is? Us, the Phoenix Suns fans. That's why I said at the beginning of this podcast, the state of the Suns. Ask not what you can do for your sons. Ask what your sons can do for you. Again, there's a poll on the YouTube chat. If you have a chance, go ahead and let me know if my JFK impression is worth a shit. And should I invest in getting a little JFK bobblehead and maybe being, after the games, it's like, Devin Booker, what a bitch. Yusuf Nurkic, I have no idea that guy is still in the league. if somebody just joined the podcast and they saw this going on right now and my hand doing talking, they'd probably be like, what the fuck am I watching? Anyways.
You got to just order Kennedy hair wig. I bet you there's something there.
Yeah,
order.
but I mean, is it a full wig or is there like a piece missing in the back?
Oh, it's right here already.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a 50s men's wig. That's not the same.
Oh, that's not the same. He died in the 60s. So talking about the state of the Suns, we start with obviously the cap sheet. And for those of you who aren't aware of the Phoenix Suns cap sheet, it's pretty grim. Next year, the 2024-25 season, Devin Booker will lead all scores. Now, Devin Booker will lead all salaries with a $52.4 million contract. It is the first year of his 4-year Supermax contract. Kevin Durant will be $51.2 million, and Bradley Beal will account for $50.2 million. So Bradley Beal makes $1 million less than Kevin Durant. So added up, that's $153.8 million in just those 3 players. The other players that are going to be under contract going into next season, Yusuf Nurkic at 18.1, Grayson Allen, 15.6, Nasir Little at 6.8. And then you have the option guys. You have David Roddy, who the team option has already been exercised for $2.8 million. And then you have the 4 player option players. That's Eric Gordon at 3.6, Josh Okogie at 2.9, Damian Lee at 2.8, and Drew Eubanks at 2.6. So everything said and done, with the luxury tax being estimated at $171.3 million. And again, the Phoenix Suns salaries adding up to be 153.8, and that's just the top 3. The Suns are going to blow by that first apron and the second apron. They're the highest, as of right now, they have the highest payroll in the league next year based on the assets that they currently have at $205.9 million. And that's with everybody opting back in. If those 4 players were to opt back in, the advantage of all that, Matthew, and tell me what your thoughts are on this. The Suns have 11. If everybody opts in, the Suns have 11 players under contract going into next season. That's very different from this time last year, where it was like Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton, and a couple more, and that was it. So they had a huge chunk going into that first apron at the time, but they had to fill out that roster, and we knew that would be a challenge. So talking about it from a state of the Suns standpoint, how do you feel about their cap sheet?
It'd be funny if they do opt in. It's like, hey, it was just a coach thing, and we're all going to come back. Like, we all know as a coach, we all trust each other out there. But obviously, I didn't see that either. So the way that, no one was a leader and no one actually really tried to step up, even though on the bench, when the Suns were losing game 4, you didn't notice Eubanks, no one was sitting there super sad. You know what I mean? Usually you would see, I think obviously Booker was, but he played to the very end. But you just saw Eubanks, Okogie, they're just standing up, kind of just smiling, joking around, putting their towel up above their face, kind of making some comments. So maybe it is a coach, maybe it is that, maybe they just know they have something special there. So it's nice to have them under the cap sheet, or not even under it, but in the second apron. How fun that's going to be. I just think that this team coming back would be fine, just because it's if you get guys to replace these guys, unless you look at with some of these dudes that we bring up on the next pod, it's going to be the same kind of guys. You know what I mean? We were excited about Eubanks. We were excited about Eric Gordon, who had a few good games in the playoffs. But you know what? If we're going to go out there and spend a little bit of money that we have left, we're going to just kind of have the same team again next year, right? We're going to get the 3-point shooters. We're going to get the defender, the perimeter defender that we're like, oh, this guy can do some shit. We're going to get the backup center that's a little bit more athletic. We're going to have that again, and it's just going to probably work out the same way.
That's the challenge, is we have pretty much the entire roster potentially could come back, and we'll talk about the player option guys and whether or not that we think the Suns should keep them. But even if you look at it on a long enough timeline, this team is kind of locked into who they're going to be. If you look at even next year, the 25-26 season, your top 6 guys are under contract. Booker, Durant, Beal, Nurkic, Allen, and Nasir Little. They're all under contract. So you do have a good foundation, if you will. And that is one thing that I don't hate about this Phoenix Suns team, is the fact that they do have their starting 5 under contract. And that gives them some flexibility because they know kind of who and what they're going to be. But again, the challenge is because of the fact that they are a second apron team. right? And what does that mean? Well, so first apron team. So first off, you have the luxury tax. And when you go over the luxury tax, you get hit with certain fees. And the Suns are 5 million over, or I'm sorry, 20 million over the luxury tax. So they're going to get hit with all kinds of fees. So essentially, for every dollar that they spend, $3.75 is added on top of that. So if they spend $1 million on a player, it's going to cost the team 375,000, whatever, 375,000, and that gets paid back into the league, right? So there's penalties for that. The first apron, when you cross that threshold, you're not going to be able to acquire a player via sign and trade. You can't use any portion of the biannual exception. Now, some of these are new this season. The NBA didn't go, okay, everybody, we are imparting these new rules, and you just have to live by them. No, they gave everybody in the NBA a couple seasons to adjust to the new aprons, if you will. But like I said, can't acquire a player via sign and trade. Can't use any portion of the biannual exception. They can't use more than the taxpayer portion up to 2 years, starting with a starting salary of $5 million of the mid-level exception. They can't sign a player who was waived during the current season if his pre-waiver salary exceeded the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. And again, that's something we knew from last year, right? Like if they made over 12.5 and they got waived, the Suns couldn't touch them. They can't take back more than 100% of the salary that they send out in a trade, and they can't use a traded player exception generated during the prior year. So that's just the first apron. You go into the second apron, first round pick is gone. The one that's 7 years out cannot be traded. Yeah. That's why you hear them say 2031 so much, because the new season starts a little bit after the draft. But the draft's on like what, the 24th, 29th, or no, not the 29th. I want to say like the 24th or 25th of June. They can trade the 2031 pick. But after that, they can't trade the 2031 pick when the new season starts, which is in early July. They can't trade it. And the reason for that is like they're saying you got to hold on to this shit. Teams will no longer be able to use the taxpayer mid-level exception, period. If a team remains in the second apron 3 out of 5 seasons, and I think it's actually 3 out of 4 seasons, their first-round pick will automatically be moved to the end of the round beginning of the next season.
Yeah.
So this is our second season in the second apron. If we're second apron next year, no matter what our pick is, it becomes pick number 33 or whatever, which is fine for us because all of our picks are trade swaps anyways, and we're going to get the worst of all the pick. Might as well move it back 5. Outgoing salaries cannot be aggregated or combined in trades. That's the new one. That's one thing that the Suns did this year is they said, you know what? We're going to combine Keita Bates-Diop plus Jordan Goodwin plus Chimezie Metu plus the other guy. And we're going to get back Royce O'Neal and David Roddy. That's aggregating salaries. We can't do that anymore. We cannot acquire a player in return for an outgoing sign and trade. We can't use trade exceptions created from a prior year. Teams can no longer use cash in trades, so there's no sweetening the pot in that capacity. And the salary matching rules themselves are getting more restrictive as the CBA transitions from these franchises being able to take on 125% of the salaries that's sent out down to 110 and now just to 100% starting July 1st. So in the past, you could send out salaries and take on 125% back. Now it's like it's got to be apples to apples. So essentially, what the Suns are doing is they're pushing all of their chips into the middle of the table. And Matt Ishbia, he's got a poker hand, and he's like, whether he's going to win or lose, he's going to play that card to the end. He's not waiting for the river. He's going to play it all the way to the end. He's going to go. He's going all in, and he's trying this new strategy. And Matthew, it's at the most inopportune time, isn't it? Because if you're watching the playoffs right now, you realize one thing. What wins right now is youth and defense. Because whatever the Suns are doing, the league is going to do the exact opposite, right? Suns are spending money. The league is going to be like, nope, you're going to be penalized to fucking shit for spending money. Suns are like, okay, we're going to have a finesse, offense-heavy team that you can't stop these 3 scores. And the league is going to go, yep, because they can get raped on a play and we're not even going to blow the whistle. And the teams that are surviving at this point and playing well are the teams that have youth because they can afford to expend the energy to play defense. Kevin Durant can't expend the energy on fucking defense. He's too goddamn old. He's saving it so he can not shoot from the mid-range or whatever, or just run isolation ball. So everything combined is the Suns are going the wrong way. The wrong way.
Yeah, unless they just truly believe, unless Matt Ishbia really believes in this team, and he's just like, you know what, like we did face the Wolves team, like I said earlier, that and everyone knows that's just really good, and let's run it back. Let's get a new culture in here. Let's get some continuity. Like we look good in the last 10 games. What did we go 7-3 against a really hard schedule, the hardest schedule in what 10 years or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
To finish out a season, so there's something there to build on. You just don't bring back the coach, but it is all in. The only thing is, of course, it's like if you had to get rid of the players, and I know Beal he's no trade clause. And if it's going to be one of those two or maybe both, that would just be like, hey, it didn't work. Let's try something else, right? Like, hey, let's find a way to ship Bradley Beal out of here because he's not happy. He doesn't want to be next to Booker and Kevin Durant. Maybe we can get him for something. Maybe we can get rid of KD, and then we'll be below that again. And then we'd still stay young. We can still have these young players around Devin Booker for the next 2 or 3 years. It's something that they have to do. They either have to buy in, like you said, just keep going all the way down until we're fucking buried into the walls of a new arena, or else you just have to just say it didn't work. Sorry, Devin Booker, that we got rid of some of your best friends and some of like the best players you played with, but we're gonna have to do it again.
And maybe they are trendsetters. Maybe what Matt Ishbia is doing with James Jones is something unlike anything we've ever seen, because it is, and it actually will work. But I feel like the strategy that they're deploying is very 10 years ago. It's what assisted the Golden State Warriors. Now, granted, the Warriors did it through the draft, did it right, and then they added Kevin Durant when the time was right.
Yeah.
And then they stayed relevant because they had Kevin Durant. So again, this aggregation of big threes, we're a decade late to it. And it's these teams that are constructed very, very differently that are having success at this point. When you talk about Bradley Beal, again, that's the biggest, and it was the issue I had when we traded for him on Father's Day of last year. You take a look at him moving forward. He's $50.2 million next year. Then he's $53.7 in the 25-26 season. And then he has a player option in 26-27 for 57, which there's no fucking doubt in my mind that he's going to exercise that. And again, a no trades clause, we're kind of stuck with Bradley Beal. In a perfect world, even when you talk about Durant, if you trade Durant and you get lesser pieces, it'll still have to add up math-wise. But if you can get lesser players relative to contracts, it creates more opportunity to move more things around. If you trade him to New York and you get like a Julius Randle and a Josh Hart, and I'm total hypothetical, haven't researched that one, but let's say that those two salaries equals Kevin Durant, you bring him in. Now you got two guys where it's like, okay, they have less salary total per player. You can trade those guys out in individual trades and maybe try to garner more assets or garner more draft picks or try to build within the draft, because the youth movement that's happening in the NBA right now is real. When you look and you see Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brunson, every team that's out there playing right now has some youthful star, and Devin Booker is a tier above those relative to age now. He's going to be, 28 this season? Every guy I just mentioned is at least 3 years younger than him. So you have to have draft picks to get these players, and the Suns aren't adopting that philosophy. They're like, draft picks are used to get players. It's like, yeah, but you're getting players when they're a little bit older, when they have more of an injury history, where they have less of the athleticism that made them as valuable as they were, and therefore can't put in the effort on the defensive end, which is where the Suns are getting mauled during this entire season and postseason.
Yeah, I mean, do you even want draft picks? So the way the Suns fucked up every draft pick, it kind of sucks. You know what I mean? I mean, they didn't really fuck it up, right? DeAndre turned out to be good.
Mm-hmm.
We missed on Halliburton. We missed on Luka.
Bridges was great.
Guys. Bridges was great. He was.
We missed on everybody.
Yeah. We could have got Shai. It's not funny at all, actually.
Oh my God, it's hilarious.
I can't stand it. But yeah. I think that what the Suns are trying to do, obviously, just to stick to it and, either blow this league out of the water by getting these guys healthy and just really making a run. But we all just know it's nothing real. But obviously it's kind of heartbreaking, right? Bradley Beal has so much money and he's getting paid so much, but like no one, and I'm not saying this, but like no one wants you, right? Like no team really wants you because of that.
Yeah.
It's like your skill set's great, but like if you get paid maybe 20 million less or 25 mil less, and yeah, every team would go after him. But just the fact that he makes that much money, and now it's just like every team, every fan base is kind of upset that he's even here, he's even there. It's kind of depressing. So stick with the family, dude. This doesn't really matter. Make your fucking money and just, who cares what everybody else thinks? Who cares how many games you play, how many playoffs you appear in, how many more sweeps the Suns have in them? Just focus on your family, dude, and try to stay happy through all this.
Go home and love your family.
Looking
Looking at the unrestricted free agents that the Suns have going out. Again, we have 11 players now. Some of them have player. Well, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through Eric Gordon, player option. Should he exercise the player option? Do you want him to exercise the player option?
This is kind of iffy because I feel like we're going to get another guy kind of like him. But I think if you're going to have him as a 6-man, I don't want him back, obviously. It's just with the 6 men in the league that are kind of just taking over. I mean, like, look at Naz Reid, a player like that you can just put in the starting lineup and you can still win by 30 points. So I think if he's going to be a 6-man, it's kind of a guy that I don't want to have come back. What do you think?
I agree. I think there's a ton of Eric Gordons out in the league that are a lot younger and can actually play a little bit of defense. Again, the challenge is, let's say that he opts into his player option of $3.4 million. You can't take that plus a Josh Okogie contract and send it off for somebody. It'd have to be a 1-for-1, or you just just cut his ass. What about Josh Okogie? $2.9 million. Should he come back, and do you want him to come back?
No, I do love Josh Okogie, but I don't think he's going to want to come back just for the fact that it's like this has happened again where he showed some good play in the beginning of the year, then just did not play at all. Then he came back in the playoffs and made a little bit of a difference. So if I were to come back, if I'm Josh Okogie, I have to have a buy-in with the coach. Be like, you know what, you're going to be consistent. You're going to be a consistent player in this rotation. But if I were him, I would look elsewhere.
If I was Josh Okogie, I would come back. I would opt in because he didn't do enough this season to garner enough attention anywhere else. I will say that I would like Okogie back because, again, there's 15 guys on the lineup, and Okogie isn't a regular rotation guy just because of his abilities on the offensive end. We want him to be good, but man, he just isn't. What he brings defensively, yeah, every time you watch him play on defense, and he's just got energy. I think that the Suns were so bad when it comes to that word energy that when we saw just Okogie in finally play in the postseason, we're like, oh, look at that. Somebody who gives a shit. It's amazing. It's an albatross. It's like, no, every other team in the NBA that's still playing right now have a bunch of guys who give a shit. We had one. His name was Josh Okogie. But I would like to have him around because he's a good plug-in energy guy. If somebody's injured during the regular season, he can get a few minutes. I'm all for it. So I hope he's one I hope opts back in. Then you have Damian Lee, who obviously, if you look at his stats last year, zeros across the board because he did not play. $2.8 million. Does he opt back in? And if he does, do you keep him?
Yeah, you know what? I do see him opting back in, obviously, like you said with Josh Okogie. He didn't show enough last year, right? To entice anybody else to sign up for more. So I obviously wouldn't be mad if he came back, but obviously someone that needs to be healthy to be on the floor because he could be a difference maker, someone that can just fill that spot as a shooter. Instead of having an Eric Gordon on your team that's going to make the wrong move, try to get to the hole and just draw a foul and just completely stupid.
Damian Lee has a very specific set of skills. And I think that because of that, I don't think he opts back in. I think that he tests his ability on the open market and tries to go get one of those $5 to $7 million contracts somewhere because he is somebody who has won a championship. He is somebody who is a great 3-point shooter. And I don't think it's the right move just because like he'd be dicking over the Suns. The Suns could have cut his ass last year easy, but they held on to him because he was injured. And that's how they would get repaid. But you know what? That would be very Suns. So I would like him to be back, though, because, again, if we're talking about filling out a roster, I think that he's already at the veteran minimum. He has one specific skill that's very good, and I'm for that. And the last player option guy, Drew Eubanks, $2.6 million. Does he opt back into his contract? And do you want him to?
Hell yeah, he's going to. I think he will, but I don't want him to, really. Unless he's a third center or something on the team, but we don't have room for that. We don't have the money for that. So the fact that he just was a total turtle shell out there, clean shaven. I don't fucking I mean, what else can we say about Eubanks? It's painful to talk about still. can't go back.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do another season of Drew Eubanks. He had his moments, man. If Andre Drummond was the opposing center every time we played against somebody, it would be unbelievably fantastic because we would get the best
That was
version
amazing.
possible of Drew Eubanks. But at the same time, I don't see a world in which he makes sense on this team, in my opinion. But again, if you take a look at the free agent market and what's out there, there's not a lot to really get excited about. So again, it's like, do you bring him in and, like you said, potentially have him as a third center, hoping that you can make some move? And because again, if he's a third center, man, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
But go ahead.
no, I was gonna say the only way is like if you do end up playing KD as like a small ball 5 most of the time. Like that's your second option. Like you got your starting center, then all right, we're gonna go small KD or something like that. But
yeah, but KD, he shouldn't be doing that shit. We need to go the other way with KD. We need to have him playing the 3, not the 5. But when it comes to Drew Eubanks, there's only one thing I want to say to him. I would love to say bye-bye to Drew Eubanks.
I thought that was gonna go on longer, dude.
No, I don't want to get copyright infringed.
It's too late. I think you went longer, but I would love you to get up and start dancing.
Yeah, dude, like I'm 41. If you go to, it's so funny because like when all of the when all of NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and all that stuff was happening, that's what my high school era was like.
Yeah.
I think back to like my parents, and they had the Beatles and the Beach Boys and the Rolling Stones and just great fucking music. And when I was in high school, it was the pop shit. Like I was a freshman in high school when Britney Spears came on the scene, and I think that's why I was so into Eminem, because he was kind of the anti all of that. And it's funny because growing up in that time frame, if you listen to that kind of stuff, you were definitely looked down upon. You know what I mean? Like, that's chick music, bro. What are you doing, dude? Limp Bizkit. And now, if you go to a wedding and Bye 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 comes on, every dude my age is out there and just fucking doing the dance.
they know all the moves.
Yeah.
You know, it's still good workout music too. All that poppy stuff. Like I listen to Britney Spears, Enrique Iglesias, all those Pitbull nasty songs, dude. It gets really. You gotta watch it though, man.
Worldwide.
Form your mind. It's too late. Just give in.
Worldwide. All right. Well, let's talk about the unrestricted free agents. You have Isaiah Thomas. Does he come back? And should we try to bring him back?
No, I want some. I like the leadership and shit, but I want that on the court. I can't take it another year if we're gonna get someone to come on the bench. But you know what? He's a vet. You know, he's been there before. He's a good leader, but he's not gonna play at all. I don't want that anymore,
dude.
The locker room guy. I'm done with it.
I'm done with it too. What about Thad Young?
No, man. I liked him when he played. He fucking was great for like the 6 minutes he played.
Those were good.
I thought he was fine. Yeah.
What about Bol?
Yeah.
Do you think that Bol did enough this year to test his viability on the open market?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, this is his best year ever. I feel like any team that gets him, they're gonna be so lucky, and I can't wait to see highlights of him in another uniform. Just be so fucking upset.
I'm okay with Bol leaving, just because we need grit and we need defense, and he's not going to give us those things. He was fun coming off the bench, though.
Yeah,
I enjoyed the roller coaster this year. And last but not least, Royce O'Neal.
Yeah, you know his. It wasn't his exit interview, but it was an interview before the last game. I think he did kind of just be like, "Yeah, I'm going to see what else is out there." The way he responded, I just kind of feel like he's gonna go somewhere else. He didn't say anything about, "Oh, Phoenix, like I love this place, like this is my home," or anything like that. Obviously, he's not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like he's just gonna move on, get something else somewhere else.
So BLA in the chat says, "Do not keep Royce O'Neal." I go the other way on that. I think that the Suns should do everything they can to try to keep Royce O'Neal for a couple different reasons. One, you have his bird rights, so you can pay him more than what's out on the open market. So why not? Two, I liked what he brought in from the bench. He's a 3-and-D guy, He can, and part of that is the three, where you can hit the three ball, and part of that's the defense. Now, he wasn't the greatest perimeter defender, but if anybody tried to drive on him, man, he had those quick hands, and he would have some fuck shit up ability as you tried to navigate in the paint. And given the fact that the NBA is allowing more physicality, I think that he's the ideal fit. He gives you some of that defense that you so desperately need. And if you can sign him to like a 3-year, I mean, he was making what, like 9.5. So let's say you can pay him like 3 years, $36 million, right? So $12 million, even up to like a Grayson Allen contract, $15 million. That's a highly tradable contract if needed. And that's what you need. You need to have some of these highly tradable contracts, which the Suns don't necessarily have a ton of. Again, I'm going to bring up that cap sheet again for those of you who are watching. And you'll see the highly tradable contracts are Nurkic at 18.1, Allen at 15.6, Little at 6.8, but it's hard to get rid of Little because Little's here 6.8 next year, 7.3 the next year, and 7.8 the next year. He's got 3 more years on that contract, and he's kind of a zero. He's a development guy that you don't really or didn't try to develop. So add another contract at Royce O'Neal. So worst case scenario, you bring in Royce O'Neal, maybe you don't like him, but ultimately you carry on from him and utilize his contract to gain other assets and things of that nature. And I see Beat LA said Royce O'Neal scored 5 points in the playoffs. Well, he scored 5 points a game in the playoffs, not 5 points. And also, don't use this playoffs as the end-all be-all to your decision-making moving forward. Because if that's the case, then you're going to take a look around this entire team, and you're just going to be like, you know what? The Suns sucked in the playoffs. Had Devin Booker not had that final game, he was averaging like 18 points a game in the playoffs. But he put up a 49 spot. So I think that you bring him in and you try to do something with it. Saul, trade Nurk and Little for sure.
Oh, is that crazy?
If you can trade Little, that's huge. Huge.
God, we're so disgusting though.
I know.
No one wants these players. It's insane. Like even Nurk.
Do you know what they want to say to these players?
You know what? I hate to say it, but Bill Simmons is right, man. Like Nurk's just not a guy you can have. He's not a center you can have in the playoffs, especially. We traded a player with problems for another player with problems, but
100%.
One that just could not compete. And I know he went up against Rudy Gobert and Towns, and those guys are long, tall. Naz Reid, but the way it just came about where he just was non-existent, it was kind of disappointing, man, because he had such a good year. So it'd be nice to trade any of these guys, but what the hell are we going to get for them? Are we going to be happy with anything we get? We had to
Does anybody want
Ayton to get Nurk? Yeah, exactly. We had to trade Ayton to get Nurk and Grayson Allen and all that, which Grayson Allen turned out to be a great guy on the team. But there's just nothing sexy about this team right now. So let it die down. Let's get a coach in here.
Well, I mean,
and maybe some dong shots to leak on the internet. Maybe we can
I'll ask you this last question before we get out of here, Matthew.
Yes.
The Wolves are punking the Denver Nuggets. Does that make you feel any better about the season that the Phoenix Suns had and the way that it ended, considering that we got swept? And even like Ryan Russillo tweeted it out, right? He goes, hold on, were the Phoenix Suns actually good, considering how dominant this Timberwolves team has been this postseason?
If we were actually building something here and like, hey, this is our first time with this coach and we know he's going to be around for actually the 5 years we signed him up for, then yeah,
they canned him after one.
Yeah, and I'd feel totally fine with this team. Be like, you know what? Yeah, let's run it back again. But no, not really, man. Because I look at the Wolves, I'm like, damn, like even the Nuggets, like those guys just have that guy on their team that can lead them into these crazy finals runs where it's like in the second round, they're already saying that they're going to win the finals. Like that does not make me feel better because the Suns should be there. The Suns should be there every year with Devin Booker as that guy, and that just makes me more depressed. I know it looks good because, you know, the Suns got their ass whooped and they look so good at the end of the season, but the fact that these other teams in the West are that much better than the Suns, it kind of just brings me down. What do you think, though, man? You feeling a little bit better?
I think that when I see what Minnesota is doing to Denver, the defending NBA champions, knowing that they went through Phoenix and swept us first, it doesn't make me feel good at all because the Suns are who we thought they were. We hoped that they wouldn't become postseason, but they were too inconsistent the entire season. So I don't care that Minnesota is playing amazing. It's like, oh, well, if they're that good, then clearly it wasn't Phoenix. It wasn't all Phoenix. They're just that. No. Phoenix did their part. That's 100% sure, in my opinion. And again, it's unfortunate as a Suns fan because it seems like we run into these teams that find themselves and they do it at our expense. That's what's happening with the Wolves right now. You go back to like the 94, 95 Rockets. Those were teams that found themselves at our expense, who learned how to become a cohesive championship level unit, and they did it against the Suns, and they went on to win championships. You look at the Spurs in 2005, before their dynasty really kicked off. They had already won a championship in 99 and 03. And 03, they went through us too. I think we won game 1 when Stephon Marbury hit like a half quarter. But 05 was like at our expense. They galvanized as a defensive unit and said, hey, this is how we're going to play basketball. And we're going to impose our will to the point where you're going to get rid of Joe Johnson and you're going to get rid of Quentin Richardson and bring in Kurt Thomas and Boris Diaw in an effort to try to bend the knee to us, not vice versa. So it's happened throughout the history of the Suns. And, you know, Jamsters out there, if you're watching or listening, we all know that this is, you know, the state of the Suns is one in disarray. And the future isn't necessarily bright because a lot of the assets have been expended. The cap sheet that I've shown you is not good looking. It's not our money, so it doesn't matter. But because of the first and second apron, the team is highly hampered in ways that they can improve this roster in the short term. And they're hurting themselves in the long term as well. Because as I mentioned, your first round draft pick gets moved to the end of the round. And there's all these extra restrictions. But the one thing that we all have is each other to hang out in this misery. You know, and I guess that the misery loves company and Jackie Onassis Kennedy. And we're going to hold on for the ride. I mean, that's what it means to be a Suns fan. When Matthew and I started this podcast, it was right after this team had won 18 games. And within 2 seasons, we were in the NBA Finals. Now, the reason for that is because we utilized draft picks and youth and chemistry, and we were a team that could play defense, and all of a sudden, boom, we're in the finals. What a fucking concept. And now we're going the exact 180, and who knows what's going to happen moving forward. Another 180 might be out there some way. It could be, hey, Bradley Beal, you know what? We're going to talk you into wanting to be traded. Kevin Durant, goodbye. You take those 2 assets and you do something with them, but you build around Book at least right now. Now, if this is 5 years from now, and Devin Booker is 32 years old and he just finished his max contract and he's not happy, we'll have those conversations, but we'll still be here for you, Suns fans, because that's what we do. So thanks for tuning in and watching the State of the Suns. We will be coming live to you 8 p.m. on Mondays, Trade Machine Mondays, for the next 5 or 6 weeks as we take a look at the different assets that we have on this team that are tradable. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little. Hell, maybe we will even do a Beal episode. So the next 6 Mondays, we're going to be hanging out in that trade machine. So come support us. We give a shit, unlike the Suns, but we're going to, and then Thursdays we'll have other topics, especially at least during the regular season or the playoffs. Once the season slows down and we get through draft day and free agency, once July hits, everything's kind of over. But we appreciate you hanging out with us, spending some time. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review. Head over to brightsideofthesun.com. Matthew, we got to do a playback. I think we're waiting for like the Western Conference Finals for like a playback, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always think about doing it, but then I'm like, God, dude, I'm
still burnt out from it. I'm still burnt out.
I know I want to, but it's just like, I don't know. There's something always comes up or something. I don't know. But yeah. Anyways, I don't know. Yeah, we should. For sure.
Well, we'll figure one of those out.
Nuggets series when it goes to 7.
There you go. There you go. A game 7. Yeah, I'm all for it. But I mean, again, thanks to everyone for hanging out with us. Monday's Trade Machine, Kevin Durant. So if you have some ideas on the Kevin Durant trade, hit us up at Suns Jam on Twitter. Give us your ideas. We'll read some of your ideas right here on the pod. I want to hear what other people are thinking when it comes to the Trade Machine and Kevin Durant.
Yep, and how ass we are for doing it. at all.
Yeah,
but,
well, fuck them. Fuck the KD stand. I'm so over any KD stand who sits there and tells me I should be holier than thou, and I'm lucky. And Kevin Durant should shoot the ball 87 times a game. That's how you can win the bat. Go fuck yourself. Instead of go home and loving your family, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Made his money. Yeah, there you go.
All right, go home and don't F yourself. Love your family.
Just kidding.
On Sun's Jam Session, post-game thrill, John and Matthew, podcast skill, analyzing games with comedic flair since 2019, they've been right here. Sun's Jam Session, post-game pod, talking Suns ball with the Jamster squad, from the Valley of the Sun, spreading the word, original podcast, haven't you heard? Subreddit stakeout behind enemy lines, Batman, Valley, Lissy, and Curry combined, reporting live, with jokes to the brain, adding flavor to the podcast game. Suns Jam Session, post-game pod, talking Suns ball with the Jamster squad, from the Valley of the Sun, spreading the word, original podcast, haven't you heard? Subreddit stakeout behind enemy lines, Batman, Valley, Lissy, and Kermit combined, reporting live,
Kermit.
with jokes to the brain, adding flavor to the podcast game. Suns Jam Session, post-game pod, talking Suns ball with the Jamster squad, from the Valley of the Sun, spreading the word, original podcast, haven't you heard? Die-hard fans are just passing through, Suns Jam Session's got some for you. Lick the eyes to the feet, spit a bite, with the Suns through the day and the night. After every game, don't miss the beat. Suns Jam Session is gonna bring the heat. John and Matthew leading the way in the Suns podcast, right on fresh. Suns Jam Session, post-game pod, talking Suns ball with the Jamster squad, from the Valley of the Sun,